Welcome to Arkansas Wildlife. We're here this week in Mountain View, home of the Arkansas Folk Festival. Been going on here for more than 50 years. Now, this area is known for its music and also for some great hunting and fishing opportunities, and we're going to check into those a little bit later too. We'll also talk about the biology of smallmouth bass, what makes them tick, and perhaps offer some insights that might help you catch more brown bass. But first, here's a little sample of the Arkansas Folk Festival. Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by Zimmerman Sports Center on South University in Little Rock.
Well, since I started working at Game and Fish, I've been telling the guys about my parents' cabin in North Arkansas and how great the fishing is up there. So this was our first opportunity for all of us to get out of town and actually have the opportunity to go smallmouth fishing. And it was the 1st of April, so it was a great time of year, and all we needed was actually for the fish to cooperate, and I crossed my fingers that we'd have a good fishing weekend.
Dave had been talking about his parents' place up there in North Arkansas for a long time. We finally got a group together that consisted of course, Dave and Scotty Wyatt, producer and videographer on the show, as well as a couple of my old Pine Bluff buddies, Lance Riley, who I grew up with in Pine Bluff, and John Flowers, who graduated with me in Pine Bluff, but actually grew up in Southern California. So this is really a totally new experience for John. Another cool thing about this trip is we picked the weekend of the Ozark Folk Festival in Mountain View, a very long-running festival where you get to hear, hillbilly, folk, Americana music that's popular because of the Ozark Folk Center up there. Of course, people gather on the downtown square and in the parks in downtown Mountain View. And so we went to fish, but the music was another attraction for us. We hadn't been in Mountain View probably 10 minutes listening to music, and I ran into my old friend, Jay Kafka, who is the father of a really good friend of mine, and also a former editor of Arkansas Wildlife magazine. Jay actually worked at Game and Fish in the 70s and 80s, and I have spent a lot of time wading Ozark creeks in that area with Jay over the years. And actually, when he left Little Rock, went to Mountain View for 2 reasons: music and fishing.
Mountain View, it's a wonderful place. It's got tremendous fishing opportunity. Just about in any direction you go. You got creeks, you got White River. There's a ton of creeks up here just loaded with fish. And of course the music brought me up here. I started coming up at about 1965, and I've been here ever since. I'm a fixture up here. I'm probably the oldest musician up here now. Not that I'm proud of that.
So the question I posed to Jay, which is better, the music or the fishing?
Oh, fishing. There's 3 things I like about Mountain View: fishing. Music comes in last, I'll assure you. You're in the heart of smallmouth country here in the Ozarks, because again, we have these spring-fed creeks, and smallmouth bass just don't like calm, slightly dingy water. It's got to be cold, clear, and running. That's the necessary ingredients for smallmouth fishing, and we've got it in all these creeks up here. It's spring-fed, and that's the whole secret. There's a lot of these creeks that people don't know about.
Creeks that people don't know about? We just might have to check that out. We poked around downtown Mountain View for a while, listened to some music. John got to pick a little bit on some unusual musical instruments that we saw for sale there with one of the vendors. But after listening to some music and playing around a little bit, it was time to go for the main attraction, and that's fishing on an Ozark smallmouth stream. Coming up after the break, we're hitting the creek in search of smallmouth bass.
Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by the Arkansas Game and Fish Foundation. Support wildlife and conservation education in the natural state. Become a member today.
This stream is a classic Ozark, North Arkansas stream. It connects to the White River in the spring. You can catch great smallmouth. And in the wintertime, the trout actually will come up from the White and you can catch trout right in front of the cabin. So it's a great place to fish. But I've been told not to disclose the exact location of the stream, so I'm going to keep that under wraps.
Dave had bragged on the quality of fishing in this stream for a long time, and you know, I always go into things maybe a little bit skeptical. I mean, is it really going to be as good as he said? I think even Dave was surprised that it was as good as it was, because we caught fish from the moment we got there until the minute we left.
I've fished this stream hundreds of times, so I figured that I would have a little bit of a home stream advantage because I kind of know where the good holes are. So I went straight to the big hole that usually holds a lot of fish, just to get a little bit of a one-up on Trey to start off the day. And actually, it worked because I caught a fish on like my second cast. But of course, Trey came back and passed me again, and then I never caught up.
If you've watched this show any in the past, you know that smallmouth fishing in the Ozarks and Ouachitas is one of my favorite pursuits of all the outdoor pursuits in Arkansas. So this was right up my alley. You know, one of the things that attracts me to it, first of all, smallmouth are just incredible fighters. They don't always grow huge here in Arkansas, but you know, even a 12, 14-inch fish can stretch your line, and it's just a ton of fun.
This is my first trip with Arkansas Wildlife TV. I'd been, you know, in the office editing most of the time, so this was a great opportunity to get out and actually shoot some video of fishing. And Scotty and I kind of traded back and forth, and we were catching so many fish that we just switched off almost every fish. I'd shoot him fishing, and he'd shoot me fishing, so it worked out great.
Everyone starts catching fish, and we're running back and forth, trying to get cameras going, and I'm shooting one person catching fish, and behind me, you've got somebody else catching fish. So it was non-stop action for me, and that's actually a pretty good problem to have.
John grew up in the outdoors of Southern California, did a lot of surfing, a lot of hiking, and a lot of water sports, but he'd never really done a lot of fishing. And then over the last few years, every time, he doesn't live in Arkansas anymore, but when he comes through, he always wants me to take him fishing. So it just timed out perfectly that we were going to be doing this trip, and he jumped at the opportunity. Took a little bit of time. He was really kind of struggling to get that feel down, but we worked with him, and he finally got on an Arkansas smallmouth there toward the end of the day. Most of our fishing was done right behind the cabin in a nice little bend, a very productive hole, but we changed the scenery up. We were there for a couple of days and went to a new spot that Dave promised was going to be productive, as well as a beautiful location, and there were some really nice bluffs there. I don't think we caught as many fish, but we were still catching fish. As a friend of mine once said, Smallmouth don't live in ugly places, so that's another big attraction. I mean, you look and you see these big bluff walls and the clear water. It is just, that's part of the attraction of it. It's just a beautiful place to pursue something that you enjoy doing anyway. And what would any fishing trip be without a story about the one that got away? Oh! I had one that still haunts me to this day. There was one spot, David had been fishing it a lot, and he had missed a fish a couple of times, so I went over there, and man, I kept getting a bump, and I didn't ever get the fish. Finally, this thing bit, and I could tell right away it was heavy, it was a good fish, and I wouldn't be telling the story if I'd actually caught the fish. He got off, and I had what you might call a Mike Iaconelli or Incredible Hulk type moment. You know, this is all in fun, but everybody wants to catch the most fish or the biggest fish. Well, at least this crew. And Scotty and I kind of have an ongoing thing. He sends me pictures from the Caddo River with big fish. I send him pictures of big fish from other places. So it was really only fitting that while Scotty and I were down at one point, that guess who caught the biggest fish? It was Scotty. I freely admit that. He was the champion of the big fish derby on this particular trip.
Usually Trey catches the biggest fish, but this time, yeah, I caught the biggest fish. Fortunately, Trey was there to capture the moment I caught this big fish, and I'm pretty sure he was upset about it. He didn't say he was, but I could see it all over his face. I caught the biggest fish, he didn't. Sorry, Trey.
Well, it turns out the fish did cooperate. It was a great fishing weekend. Everybody caught a bunch of fish. So we had a great weekend with the guys, had a great steak dinner Friday night, got to fish. It was just a wonderful weekend and a great first trip with Arkansas Wildlife TV.
We didn't give you the name of this particular stream. We accessed it over private land, but there are actually plenty of places on this stream where you can access it publicly. And more importantly, there are streams just like this all over the Ozarks and Ouachitas where you can wet a hook, wade, have public access, lots of spots in the National Forest, both the Ozark and Ouachita National Forest. Springtime in Arkansas, the Ozarks, the Ouachitas, smallmouth bass fishing, get out there and do it. You can do a trip just like this.
Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by Arkansas's own PK Grills, maker of the new PK 360, the best and last grill you'll ever buy.
There we go, here's a better one. Came out from under the rock. Yeah, good sized fish. Boy, they're fun. Tenacious.
It's not hard to find the right words to describe smallmouth bass.
There are native fish. I kind of think of them as this tough mountain strain fish that can survive. Kind of like the song "Country Boy Can Survive." You know, they're kind of the Arkansas country boy fish.
Arkansas is near the southern limit of the smallmouth bass's range. Here in the natural state, you'll find smallmouth in upland streams in the Ozark and Ouachita Mountains, as well as large Corps of Engineers reservoirs like Greer's Ferry Lake.
Clear, cool streams. They avoid turbid areas, so they're not really found in delta streams. Smallmouth bass love springs. They really like groundwater-fed streams. Groundwater can be a major determining factor, along with the frequency of and abundance of big, large boulders and complex hydraulic habitats with boulders, large woody debris, logs, treetops, things like that. In general, the smallmouth are often found in the most far upstream reaches, And as you start getting into lower gradient sections of a river, you'll find more spotted bass and more largemouth bass.
Arkansas harbors at least 3 distinct strains of smallmouth bass. They've likely evolved over time to adapt to the state's unique environmental conditions, such as warmer water temperatures and the flood and drought cycles common in Arkansas's upland streams.
In Arkansas, we're really fortunate. We're the center of diversity for smallmouth bass throughout its range. We're still doing research to figure that out exactly, but we have definitely a Neosho strain that was recognized as early as 1940. And the Neosho strain is found in streams that drain into the Arkansas River. And we also have a unique Ouachita lineage. And genetically, we know they're different. And those are streams in the Ouachita Mountains and the Ouachita and Red River basins. We also have more of a northern fish that kind of is also like a Neosho fish in some of our Ozark Highland streams. They call some of those intergrades. But most of the diversity of smallmouth bass range-wide occurs in Arkansas.
Arkansas smallmouth exhibit slower growth rates than their relatives in large lakes and reservoirs. That's largely a function of the smaller streams they call home, where floods, droughts, and high summertime water temperatures may hinder growth. That's why many Arkansas streams feature minimum length limits, and many anglers stress the importance of catch and release fishing.
For fish growth in general, I like to say big fish, big water. Smallmouth bass is no exception. In general, to produce an 18-inch fish in Crooked Creek, when we looked at it, it could take 8 to 10 years. So it can take quite a long time to really get them to those trophy sizes.
If you're looking to catch one of those trophy bronzebacks, you'd be wise to throw a lure that imitates a crawfish.
The main staple of their diet when they're in their adult and juvenile stages usually is crayfish. Studies usually range between 75 to 50% of what they're eating is going to be crayfish. Small fish and minnows often make up 25 to 50% of the diet.
It's no secret to experienced anglers that smallmouth bass are much more aggressive than largemouth and spotted bass.
Look at this one chasing here. Yeah, come here, Dwayne.
Keep him out
This
there.
is the one you want right here.
Keep him out there.
Number one, they are a territorial fish. That's well established. So they're going to establish territories and vigorously defend them. But we don't exactly know why they're so much more gamey than other fish and territorial. But they also have a little bit higher metabolic demands at a lot of temperatures. That could explain why they might strike things at a higher frequency.
The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission is renewing its focus on conserving and managing the state's unique smallmouth bass. But challenges remain.
Habitat loss is certainly the biggest threat to smallmouth bass through excessive sedimentation. We're also seeing time periods now with flash droughts followed by really excessively high rains, and that's causing a lot of bank erosion. That erosion can smother the eggs of the smallmouth bass. Also, we're getting some pretty high water temperatures now. Urbanization causes streams to be more flashy, and the water's not soaking in the ground and cooling off and going back in the stream then through groundwater. So another threat to smallmouth bass is nutrients. We have a lot of areas of the state that are now our nutrient surplus areas, and we're seeing large amounts of algae in the stream. And most of our native fish really don't like and aren't that adapted to seeing excessive algae in the stream.
If there's a fish that can overcome these challenges, it's the Arkansas smallmouth bass. Like the hardscrabble settlers who made their homes in these hills, the native Arkansas smallmouth is tenacious and assertive, and a lot of fun to catch.